Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective. In today's installment, we shall be covering episode 52, Snack Attack, Part 1, or as it's known in the Japanese original, Demonic Chocolate Capsule, Part 1. Just to clarify, this video is a review of the first part in the series' fourth two-parter, not the first part of a review of a single episode. I will also be discussing this episode for the most part as its own entity, and will be saving my thoughts on the two-parter as a whole until I decide to review part 2. Much like all my previous reviews of two-parters of Kirby Right Back At Ya, that is how I'll be handling things. This episode was originally released in Japan on October 12, 2002 as the 52nd episode, whereas the English dub, done by the infamous 4Kids, was released on September 6, 2003. This was likely due to the shifting of the release dates of other episodes, as opposed to anything related to this episode in and of itself. This is also the first episode of Season 3, which, like the previous Season 2, is a standard 25 episodes in length. Enough of this pre-review stuff, though. Let us start with what you guys are really interested in, that being the review of the episode itself. The episode opens on a wide shot of an unspecified meadow near Cappytown at night. We see that there is a pile of trash as we see the two Cappies, Gengu and Tuggle, carrying trash, despite there being an evident sign that suggests that dumping trash is banned in this area. The two put down their trash, seeming to be getting away with it until they are caught by the flash of a flashlight held by none other than the young girl Tiff. The two immediately apologize, with Gengu saying they didn't know that someone like her would be out here patrolling. Tiff explains that she decided to go on patrol in order to catch whatever little bugs were behind the piles of trash in this field. The pair of local businessmen apologize, and Tiff incredulously asks why they're not putting their trash in the town dump. Tuggle, the grocery store owner, explains that they didn't want people to see what they were dumping, with Gengu saying that people will think that they are just selling junk. Tiff looks shocked, as all the trash is perfectly fine and undamaged merchandise from their two stores, that being collectible figures from the toy shop and chocolate capsules from the grocery store. She asks why they are throwing all this perfectly fine merchandise away. Tuggle and Gengu explain that no one wants them and that they had to throw it away as they simply weren't selling and they just had to clear some space. Tiff rightfully chastises them for wasting the resources of Dreamland and says that there must be some way to sell all this stuff. The two say they have no idea. She then sighs and suggests to them to be creative for once, and then comes up with the idea to combine the two products into one. The two local businessmen, Tuggle and Gengu, ask her how this can be done, and Tiff, in her moment of wisdom, suggests that they put the little toy figures in the hollow chocolate capsules. The two are then ultimately convinced of her idea, saying that they could make $1 million off this, with Tuggle and Gengu saying it's not a risk, because if it fails, they can always dump it here again. Tiff sighs as she sees how they completely missed her point in the cause of their own personal greed. We then cut to the jazzy intro. After the jazzy intro, we then cut to Tuggle's grocery store. We see tough Kirby, Iroh, Spy Cat, and the other Cappy kids entering into the store, where they are greeted by the two store owners who show off the new product, Chalk Surprise Balls, or in the Japanese original, Chalk Capsules. There's actually quite a bit to talk about involving this. First is the matter of what they are exactly based on. Many claim in the community that they were predictive of the amiibo, or at least inspired by them. While, yes, this is an understandable position for one to have, given how impactful amiibo were for a time in culture, however, this episode was released over a decade before the first amiibo were released on November 21st, 2014. And second, this isn't really a prediction, given that amiibo were not released in food, and there are actually two products released far closer to this episode's release date and development that frankly are far more likely to be inspirations. First, physically speaking, the capsules closely resemble the Kinder Surprise eggs, which are an Italian brand of candy which have been banned from the US due to choking concerns, and have faced a recent manufacturing due to an Australian woman thinking they supported the Ku Klux Klan due to one of the characters holding three K-bearing balloons. That's so silly. It may also have taken inspiration from the Wonder Ball, which is a similar product created by Nestle and sold in the US and Japan. Nestle has itself faced controversy due to engaging in child slavery in West Africa. On a slightly lighter note, we also see on the poster the various figures which are there to be collected, which display a great number of cameos of characters we've seen and will see in the future. These include, of course, a generic foot soldier Star Warrior that really has no reference to it at all. More noteworthy are Yamakage, the evil ninja seen back in episode 24, Ninja Binge. Knuckle Joe's father, seen in the flashback in episode 19, Here Comes the Sun, and the Sergeant Kit Cosmos, who was seen back in episode 22, Island of the Lost Warrior. All episodes I've already reviewed, so go please check all of those out. I'm sure you'll greatly enjoy their reviews. There's also an additional 4 figures. These are Sir Arthur, Sir Galahad, Sir Lancelot, and Sir Percival. 4 Star Wars that, I kid you not, reappear all the way in episode 99, Combat Kirby. Yeah, they planned very much ahead for this anime, and it shows that this show had a lot of heart put into it, and it shouldn't be dismissed as just being a kid's show, as some pedantic pedestrians unfortunately do so. Tuff is a bit hesitant and asks what is so great about this new product. Tuggle says it combines 2 kid favorites. Tuff asks for clarification, and Gengu says it has candy with a toy inside and encourages Tuff to try one, and the kid humors him by taking a free sample. Opening the box, he gets out the capsule, which is in a little plastic bag. Saying it looks good, he takes a bite out of the candy after he removes it from the little plastic bag, which reveals a Kit Cosmos toy, which astounds the kid, and Tuff explains who he is to the kids, who then desire to get their own figures of Star Warriors. He then ends up not eating the rest of the chocolate and gives it to Kirby, who is overjoyed at the sweet delight. The Cappy kids get their own capsules and get their own figures. Iroh gets a Sir Galahad, Spy Cat gets a Yamakage, and Honey only gets a lowly trooper, which Iroh points out isn't that special, but she's still happy to see it. They then give their leftover chocolate to Kirby, who is just happy. Tuff gets another Kit Cosmos, and he and the other kids get a lot more figures, giving Kirby the leftover chocolate. Tuggle and Gengu are ecstatic that their product is a hit and being very successful. We then cut to Tuff's family room, where we see Kirby is stuffing his face with all the leftover chocolate as Tuff desperately looks for figures. He gets greatly upset as he gets another Kit Cosmos and so many troopers. Petulantly, he cries before we cut to him asking his mom for even more allowance. She is shocked since it was just yesterday that he got his allowance. She asks him if he has been wasting it on worthless junk. He denies this, albeit in not the best manner. We then cut to Spikehead talking to his mom, asking for mom to get him more money so that he can get more of the capsules. She, however, denies this, saying that chocolate is junk food. He petulantly complains that he wasn't getting it for the candy, but for the toys, and probably won't even eat the chocolate. In the Japanese original, there is a scene of Iroh attempting to steal money from his mom's purse in order to go purchase some more of those chocolate balls. He gets caught and thus gets in trouble. 4Kids, due to worries that children watching the show would try to imitate this act, decided to remove it, which is honestly kind of a silly concern. It's like saying Doom caused Columbine or Super Mario Brothers caused sexism. Just a clear case of stupid, namby-pamby censorship that 4Kids is infamous for. In both versions, we then cut back to Tuggle's grocery store, where we see a line of kids waiting to get the toys. They hand Kirby all the leftover chocolate, and he is amazed at joy. We then see that Spikehead gets one of the rarer figures, Knuckle Joe's father, which amazes the other kids, while Tuff complains that all he gets are Troopers and Kit Cosmoses. Iroh butts in and grabs the toy, which leaves Spikehead rather annoyed. He claims he only wants to hold it for a minute, but inevitably there erupts a small fight over the rare figure. We see the adults commentating on this as the camera pans over to Dr. Yabui, who says he never fought over toys as a kid. Melman the mailman, who is so old, says that there were no toys when he was a kid. Professor Curio says that they could be better spending their free time studying/doing their homework. Chief Bookums then suggests that a few days in the slammer would straighten them out. We cut quickly to the kids fighting over the toys before Dr. Yabui says that he admits that some of the figures look cool, which causes the adults to look at him like he's a complete weirdo, and he immediately backpedals what he just said out of shame. However, the others then begrudgingly agree with him. Chief Bookums then blows his whistle and runs over to break up the fight. He then grabs the figure, and when Spikehead tries to explain what goes on, he tells the kid to be quiet unless he wants jail time, causing the poor kid to hyperventilate in fear. He then inspects the toy and says toys were not this cool when he was a kid. We then see the mayor sneak into the grocery store and fill up a basket. He tries to claim that it's for the grandkids, though this lie does not convince Tuggle, who laughs a little before the mayor sneaks away from the store. We then see Police Chief Bookums get his own basket of the chocolate foods, as we then see Professor Curio sneak in and get some of his own to collect. We then cut to his study where we see him unpacking all the figures that he got. He gets a trooper, which he's okay with as he seems to be one of those guys that builds a battalion, like some real-life people. He then gets a very rare figure of Sir Lancelot. He dances in delight. We then cut to the mayor, who has unboxed another rare Star Warrior figure, that being Sir Percival. His wife knocks on the door, and he quickly hides it from his wife out of shame, who enters to tell him that dinner is ready. He tells her that he'll be coming, but he briefly takes out the toy again, but she re-enters the room, catching him shortly afterwards, as he gets caught playing with the toys and tries to hide it again. In the Japanese original, we see several additional scenes, including Kawasaki holding a figure of Yamikage, Melman the Mailman holding a figure of Sir Galahad, and another one of Dr. Yabui with a figure of Sir Arthur. All three of these scenes are really short and don't really have much meat to them, but I think that they do add to the sense of mania that is sweeping the town regarding the collecting of all of these toys, and really it's kind of a shame that they were removed, quite frankly. We then cut in both versions to see that the women are discussing their husband's sudden urge to collect all these plastic toys. The mayor's wife, Hannah, is the first to make a comment. Buttercup agrees with her, saying that her husband is similarly addicted. Mabel has a bit more of a positive of an opinion, saying that it at least keeps them occupied while they do their work, and the two others agree with her. We see Samo the bartender walking past. They ask about what is in his bag that he's holding. He tries to hide it but fails miserably as Buttercup says he's been shopping at Tuggle's store. Samo reluctantly admits that he is addicted to collecting the figures. Mabel decides to have a little fun, saying that she predicts that all the ones he has in the bag are just common troopers. That causes him to panic, and he runs off to exchange them for more. Mabel comments that she hopes that the men leave some of the toys for the kids. We then cut to Castle Dedede, where we see the king yelling for Escargoon, who is walking down the hall. Much to the snail's annoyance, the king asks where he has been. The snail explains that he was hungry and went to get snacks, and so went to Tuggle's grocery store. Dedede demands some to eat as he's hungry, and when Escargoon resists, he calls him stingy and grabs the bag. The two bicker until one of the boxes falls out of the bag. The king picks it up and takes a bite, revealing a rare Sir Lancelot figure. Escargoon, however, snatches it from his hand and runs off into his room. The king follows close behind after him. The snail closes the door on him and says that he shouldn't come in, trying to keep the king out, but the king ignores his desires and bursts with all his might into his room and sees the groveling gastropod has a sizable group of figures in his arms. The king says the obvious, that the chocolate capsules have toys inside, and Escargoon tries to convince him that he wouldn't be interested in these cheap toys, but the king grabs one of the troopers. Escargoon tells him to be careful since it is in mint condition. The king firmly grasps his neck and orders him to take him to the town to get some of his own. We then see him and Escargoon driving into the town from the castle. They are followed by a legion of Waddle Dees as Dedede barges into the store and pushes the kids out of the way and grabs a box to open. Gengu tells him that he has to pay for it, and the king says he'll pay later, but the store owner rightfully points out how his credit is no good, being that his IOUs turn out always to be BAD. The king then yells to Escargoon to give the man a Dedede dollar, which the store owner agrees, and then the king opens the box and gets super excited for his first figure, a trooper. However, Tuff, Iroh, and the others snicker that those troopers are the easiest to find. Tuff then shows off the rare golden-armored Sir Arthur, which the others are amazed at this rare figure. The king is dejected at his lowly figure and asks if Tuff will give him the toy. Tuff denies him this, as it took him a long time to find it, but the king complains that all he's got is a measly little trooper, and that he would really like to have his toy. Tuff then mocks the king, letting him look at the figure for a brief moment before hiding it away. The king, enraged, calls his Waddle Dee guards that surround the kids, and he then buys the entire store's stock of capsules. Tuggle and Gengu are a bit hesitant, but when are given a huge fat stack of cash, they quickly change their tune. We cut to Kawasaki, Samo, and Mabel peeking on this whole incident. Samo points out how much money that is, but Mabel says it might be counterfeit. Kawasaki, not knowing what that word means, suggests that it might be fake, which is somewhat of a funny scene. Tuff complains that now he can't do any more collecting. The king, being a petty prick, gloats that maybe if he's real nice, he can look at his collection when he's done. He then laughs as we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, Kirby says Choco Poyo. In the English dub, this is changed to him saying just Poyo. Frankly, this is perfectly fine because, in my opinion, the less Kirby speaks, the better. We then cut to Tiff walking down the street where she is shocked to see the king unboxing the Choco capsules. He unboxes them all and gives the leftover trash to Kirby, who is frankly just happy to get more food regardless of the source. We then cut to a nearby warehouse where it is revealed that there's actually a lot of stock left over. The two store owners talk to each other. The dialogue is slightly changed between versions. In the Japanese original, they talk about how they're about to introduce a Sir Metaknight figure, with Gengu saying they'll have to make it a rare figure. In the English dub, they say they have plenty of new figures to release, but they have mini troopers which, while a bane to collectors, is great for their profits. This change, while it seems relatively innocuous at first, does cause a slight issue that we'll see later on. Their laughing is cut short by Tiff, who confronts them, and it is here that we see the next change between versions, directly tied to the last one. In the Japanese original, she chastises the pair of businessmen for using Metaknight's image to sell a product without his permission, whereas in the English dub, she calls them out for their intentionally making some figures rarer just to prey on collectors. Frankly, it's a little hard to tell which version's better, as they both confront different issues that are frankly quite rampant in the industry. In either versions, the two say that they were just following her idea, as she regrets giving them that idea, and she says that while she stopped them from dumping their old trash on Cappytown, now they're dumping this new trash instead. We then cut to the next day, where we see Iroh has gotten one of the new batch of toys at Tuggle's store. Police Chief Bookums and Samo are super excited, as we see that Tuff says that he had no idea this was happening, and a large crowd gathers around the boy, and everyone is astounded at the new Metaknight figure, as Mexican music plays in the background. We then fade cut to the real Metaknight talking to Tiff, who explains the situation. In the Japanese original, this scene honestly makes a lot more sense, given how her issue was the misuse of his image. In the English dub, the justification is quite frankly not as strong, and it just seems like a random inclusion for the sake of including Metaknight, and that's a real issue, frankly. In either version, Metaknight doesn't take any offense to this, and in fact laughs about being made into a rare figure. He then walks away. Tiff is depressed about not being taken seriously with her concerns. We then cut to the king, who is annoyed at only getting troopers, wanting one of the rare figures of Metaknight to complete the collection. Angry, he then has an idea to go check up on Escargoon to see if he has it and maybe snagging it. We see him peeking in on Escargoon's room, as we see the servant is in many ways suffering the same issue. The king laughs at him, who is also having bad luck, before Escargoon then bemoans about how Iroh managed to get one. The king is shocked by this and comes up with a plan. We cut to Iroh's home at night, as we see King Dedede sneaking near his house, and he looks into the boy's window. However, this plot is cut short when he gets caught by Chief Bookums, who then proceeds to beat him up. The two fight, which awakens the boy, who looks out to see the police chief jumping and kicking the heck out of King Dedede, which is strange because King Dedede would have the physical advantage, but whatever. He then pauses once he realizes who it is. Regardless, we then see the king being thrown in jail. I would note that this episode marks the sole instance that King Dedede is put in jail for any crime that he has ever committed. Given all the horrible stuff that he's done, it is quite frankly astounding that the thing that put him in jail was attempted theft of a small plastic toy, which ended up getting him busted. Dreamland's legal system is so messed up. King Dedede complains, but Chief Bookum says that he's got to do his duty. He then grabs the Metaknight figure, claiming that it's evidence for the case. The king, however, calls him out, saying he's just going to keep the figure for himself, going further to say that he was waiting for someone to rob the place just so that he could claim the figure as a piece of quote-unquote evidence. Bookums, however, tells him to be quiet. In the Japanese original, their scene is a little bit longer. The king complains again for a bit, and we see Escargoon peeking through the window, bemoaning how the king could fall so far. 4 kids removed this scene for unknown reasons, and frankly, let's be honest, not much was lost, though I do think it is sad whenever censorship like this happens. We then cut to the next day, where we see the king sitting in his throne room, saying that he's dead to collecting, as he felt like a zoo animal stuck in that cage. Escargoon says that no self-respecting zoo would take him, which angers the king, before he says that he desires to get back at those 2 local businesses, Gengu and Tuggle, that messed him up. He calls up the enemy sales guy, who says he's happy to see the king has gotten out of jail, saying that he must have gotten a bum rap to end up in there. The king tells him to cut the gap before explaining he wants revenge! And the sales guy says that he's got just the thing to do that. The monster delivery system activates, and we cut to the grocery store the next day where we see a new set of figures. The mayor says that they don't exactly look like the standard Star Warriors. Regardless, a line of children are eager to get the figures. They then make excuses to join the line, with Bookham saying that he'll keep the peace and Curio saying that he'll help him do that. Tiff is herself also in the line. Spikey and Iroh point out that she's interested as she formerly didn't like them. Tiff denies this, saying that it's just to find out why they are so popular. Tuff, however, calls her out, saying she's just as interested as they are. She tells him to mind his own business as the store opens and the people rush in. We see people getting their toys, with Tiff exasperated as she gets a box. She looks at the poster and sees the 5 martial art all-stars, which have a great deal of trivia, but because they are far more involved in part 2, I think we'll save most of it for then. Tiff hopes she gets the somewhat cute Karate Kid, which, yes, is a reference to the main character from 1984 American martial arts film, The Karate Kid. Tiff then blushes as she feels she's falling into the hobby as well. Tuff makes a joke about her being a collector, but she denies this, saying that she's just investigating. She opens the box and bites into the chocolate, and it tastes terrible, which explains why people always give the chocolate to Kirby. Tuff says who cares, it's the figure inside that matters, and gives the chocolate to Kirby. We see King Dedede and Escargoon enter into the store, with the two happy that people are buying their product. Tiff asks how he's here when he was formally arrested. The king says all the charges were dropped, with Escargoon saying the food cost was too much for them to keep him in jail. He then almost blurts out all the plan, but Dedede slaps him and manages to avert the girl's questioning, and the two snicker about the plan. Tiff is still suspicious and asks Tuggle and Gengu where the toys came from. After a bit of hesitation, they admit that the figures mysteriously dropped out of the sky. No joke. We then see a flashback, which sadly doesn't really have much of a visual indicator as previous flashbacks in the series have, as the two small store owners discuss how to solve the sales going down. Gengu suggests putting new toys in the chocolate, like yo-yos, but Tuggle points out that they would not fit within the capsules. And, well, this is where we see the issue I was talking about earlier. In the English dub, it's implied that they have multiple figures other than Metaknight, but here this contradicts that, as it implies that Metaknight's the only figure they have left. And frankly, that's kind of a mistake that the English dub just made in and of itself, and it's quite unfortunate. But then they hear something fall outside. Rushing outside, the two see a portal in the sky open up and begin dropping boxes of the new figures onto their porch. Tiff tells them off about how it's irresponsible to sell products to people if the origins and safety are unknown. Tuggle says that it doesn't matter since it sells so well, but Tiff tells them that they can't morally sell these toys until they figure out where they come from. Gengu complains that if they dump it, then Tiff will be upset about them anyway, and the girl ends up confused. She goes to warn everyone that the figures are mysterious and potentially dangerous. However, despite her pleas, none listen to her, while Kirby is just happily consuming more and more chocolate. We then cut to that night where we see at Castle Dedede a Channel Dedede announcement where Escargoon discusses the new line of toys. In the Japanese original, there is a short scene of Tiff and her family reacting to the commercial. Cerebrum says he heard it's a big deal, while Ladylike says that Tuff spends too much money on him. Tuff asks him to hush. For some reason, 4Kids saw it fit to remove this scene. Frankly, I have no idea why. We then see Iroh and his family watching King Dedede as he discusses the new collection of collectible toys. In the Japanese original, they are called Boxer Dyson, a reference to Mike Tyson, Old Tai Kyoku, a Tai Chi master, Kung Fu Lee, a reference to Bruce Lee and a kung fu brawler, Yankee Sekitori, a sumo wrestler who kind of looks like a Billy the Fridge, and of course Karate Kid, the karate fighter. The English dub sadly just refers to them by their fighting style, which is frankly quite a waste of talent, especially given some of these names might have had a lot more weight in America, especially compared to Japanese audiences. The king promotes the toys, but the exact verbiage is changed between versions. In the Japanese original, he claims that if you leave the regular figures in the moonlight, they will turn into the rare figures. Whereas in the English dub, this is changed to him claiming that the moonlight causes them to grow in size. Both work fine, though are pretty implausible compared to putting them in water. This amazes everyone as we sadly cut to the wretched Mortakori, who has also gotten suckered into the trend and puts it on his horrible window, even though he says that it sounds really dumb. If it sounds really dumb, you turkey, why are you participating in it? He cruelly mocks Kirby's eating habits, saying that he'll need some medicine after eating all that chocolate, seemingly yet to learn the objective fact that Kirby has almost no limits when it comes to eating. We then cut to the castle where we see the king and Escargoon looking at the moon, snickering about their evil plan that's about to start. We see Iroh sleeping in his bed. The toys then activate in the moonlight. Their glowing eyes turn on and grow in size by several times before attacking their former owner. As we see people in Cappy Town suffer their toy assault, let's talk about these guys for a brief minute, since they're the episode's closest equivalent to a monster of the week. They are these blocky figures of various shapes with no voice actor, and frankly are probably one of the most generic monsters of the series in terms of design, though I think their utilization in the plot manages to allow them to overcome that and leave more of an impact than their design otherwise would. Resuming with the plot, some of the figures corner Tough, while others kick his father in the crotch, causing him to scream extremely in pain. This awakens his wife, and the two yell in fear as they are surrounded. Tiff is chased into their room by the figures, which have revealed themselves to be monsters. Tiff says they should get Kirby, as we then cut to Kirby's house, where he's being beaten up by the figures. At least the horrible Bortakoi is also getting severely hurt, so there's at least that silver lining. He squawks at Kirby to do something, but in the end, the two get slammed against the wall as the mob of figures approaches them, as we see the final change between versions. In the Japanese original, the episode ends with silence, while in the English dub, we see an unknown voice actor saying some basic narration so that people would get hooked to watch part 2. Frankly, a good change, but sadly, now that the series no longer airs, it doesn't really have much of an impact. Now, however, let's talk about the episode's positives, negatives, and my final thoughts. In terms of positives, starting with the plot, I found it to be very compelling and in some way timeless, and displayed the real impacts of collector culture. In fact, it was actually based off a real-life incident, that being the 1980s fad of Bikuman, chocolate wafers, which was an incident where a line of Japanese chocolate wafer snacks that came with these collectible stickers, and it became so popular that children and even adult collectors would buy large quantities to get stickers and then throw the chocolate away. In fact, the collecting was so severe that it actually led to punitive action by the Japanese Fair Trade Commission after parent groups complained that the stuff was promoting gambling, and so it was changed to avoid future issues. However, even without knowing that specific incident, it still has a thread that pretty much anyone who's ever desired to collect a set of objects can understand in the consumerist mindset. I mean, it goes through all the different steps, First there's kids, then the adults are a bit skeptical, and then they get into it themselves. I mean, heck, This episode doesn't even go to the sheer level of absolute buffoonery people in the real world will go to get these sort of collectibles, whether that's minifigures or like amiibo. And part of that broader good plot, Tuggle the grocery store owner and Gengu the toy store owner get their first and frankly really only major role in an episode in the entire anime series. We see both sides of the troubles that small local businesses can face in the changing landscapes. It also shines a light on the many abusive tactics that exploitative companies can put onto their consumers, whether that be blind bags, intentionally making some figures rarer than the others, selling untested products that could be dangerous to kids and consumers alike, and using the likenesses of celebrities without their permission, all of which are very scummy actions that deserve to be criticized, though not to the point of ruining any specific business, probably. I also found all the varied reactions that the characters have very intriguing and, for the most part, in line with their characters. Specifically, that being of Tiff and the King are particularly noteworthy. The adults were rather humorous with their addiction and a desire to collect them all. And though I admit that I like this, I must admit that the episode did have some negatives, mostly as a result of the changes between versions. First, frankly, all the removed scenes seem like the removal was unneeded, and frankly, in some cases, they actually weakened the episode in terms of the overall intention. Specifically, the change in dialogue involving Metaknight's figure release. The English dub implies that they have more figures, which means that when later on in that same day they worry about what to sell next, ends up generating an inconsistency that frankly didn't need to be there. I mean, it wasn't in the Japanese original, so yeah, it's just one of those weird changes that just introduces something into the anime that wasn't there, into the negative. I also thought, frankly, Meta Knight's inclusion in this overall episode was frankly kinda last minute. It didn't really seem that important. Also, in terms of the collectible Star Wars, while all those cameos are neat, I do think that there was one that could have been in there as well, which we shall see in a future episode review, but yeah, I think that was a missed opportunity as well. Overall, I would say that this was a great episode, completely worth watching. And if you're going to watch this, you might as well watch part 2 as well, as frankly, they're a good two-parter, but we'll get into the details of that next time. I'm the Dark Master, and join me next time on the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective, where we will conclude this two-parter. Subscribe if you like this video, and have a wonderful day!